Megan Torres noticed him the moment he walked in, not because he was unusual, but because of the way he looked at her, like he already knew her name. It was 11:23 p.m. on a Friday in early December, and the Starlight Diner on Route 9 outside of Bakersfield, California was nearly empty. Just a long-haul trucker finishing his coffee in booth 4 and an elderly couple sharing a slice of pie near the window. Megan had been working the overnight shift for 3 months now, ever since she moved back to California after a bad breakup in Denver, and she had learned to read people quickly, who wanted conversation, who wanted silence, who might cause trouble. This man, somewhere in his 40s with a shaved head and a faded denim jacket, wanted something she couldn't quite identify, and that uncertainty made her skin prickle with a warning she didn't yet understand. He sat down at the counter, 3 stools from the register, and ordered black coffee without looking at the menu. His voice was calm, unremarkable, but his eyes never left her face, tracking her movements as she poured the coffee, set down the cup, asked if he wanted anything to eat. He said no, just coffee, and he smiled, a thin, patient smile that didn't reach his eyes. Megan told herself she was being paranoid, that working nights had made her suspicious of everyone, that he was probably just a lonely guy passing through who didn't know how unsettling his stare could be. She busied herself wiping down tables, refilling the trucker's coffee, chatting with the elderly couple about their grandchildren in Sacramento. But every time she glanced back at the counter, he was watching her, that same half-smile frozen on his face, his coffee untouched and growing cold in front of him. At 12:15 a.m., the trucker paid his bill and left. At 12:41 a.m., the elderly couple did the same, leaving Megan alone with the man in the denim jacket and Ramon, the cook, who was in the back listening to a baseball game on his phone. The diner felt different now, smaller somehow. The fluorescent lights buzzing louder than they had before, the empty booths stretching out like witnesses who had abandoned her. Megan positioned herself near the kitchen door, close enough to call for Ramon if she needed to, and pretended to organize the dessert case while keeping the man in her peripheral vision. He still hadn't touched his coffee. At 1:07 a.m., he finally spoke again. "What time do you get off?" The question was casual, almost friendly, but something about the way he asked it, like he already knew the answer and was testing her, made Megan's throat tighten. "Late," she said, keeping her voice steady. "My manager picks me up." It was a lie. She drove herself home every night, a 12-minute route through empty streets to the small apartment she rented above a laundromat on Cedar Avenue. But something told her not to let this man know she would be alone, not to give him any information he could use. He nodded slowly, still smiling that thin smile, and finally took a sip of his cold coffee. "That's good. A woman shouldn't be out alone this late. Dangerous world out there." Megan didn't respond. She walked to the kitchen, pushed through the swinging door, and found Ramon scrolling through his phone. "There's a guy out there," she whispered, her heart beating faster now. "He's creeping me out. Can you come stand by the register for a while?" Ramon glanced through the small window in the door, shrugged, and said the guy looked harmless, probably just some weirdo who couldn't sleep. But he agreed to stay close, and for the next hour he lingered near the front, washing dishes he'd already washed and restocking supplies that didn't need restocking. The man in the denim jacket didn't order anything else. He just sat there, watching, waiting, his presence filling the diner like a slow poison. At 2:38 a.m., he stood up, left a $20 bill on the counter for a $3 coffee, and walked out without a word. Megan watched through the window as he climbed into a dark pickup truck parked at the far end of the lot, but he didn't start the engine. He just sat there, a silhouette behind the windshield, facing the diner, facing her. Her shift ended at 3 a.m. She was supposed to clock out, walk to her car, and drive home like she did every night, but that truck was still there, its headlights dark, its driver invisible in the shadows, and every instinct she had was screaming at her not to go outside. She called her older brother Miguel, who lived 20 minutes away in Delano, but he didn't answer, probably asleep, his phone on silent like always. She thought about calling the police, but what would she say? "A man bought coffee and looked at me. He asked when my shift ended." They would think she was crazy, wasting their time, and by the time they arrived, he could be gone anyway, leaving her to look paranoid and foolish. She thought about asking Ramon for a ride, but he had a motorcycle, not a car, and the idea of being exposed on the back of a bike with that truck somewhere behind them made her stomach turn. At 12:40 a.m., Megan made a decision. She grabbed her keys, her phone, and the small canister of pepper spray she kept in her purse, and she walked out the back door of the diner, through the kitchen and into the narrow alley behind the building where the dumpsters were kept. Her car was parked in the front lot. She couldn't get to it without being seen, but there was a gas station 2 blocks away that stayed open all night, and if she could get there, she could call for help from somewhere safe. The alley was dark, lit only by a single flickering bulb above the kitchen door, and Megan moved quickly, her sneakers silent on the cracked pavement. She reached the end of the alley, turned left onto a side street, and started walking toward the gas station, her breath visible in the cold December air. She made it half a block before she heard the engine. The dark pickup truck turned onto the street behind her, its headlights still off, rolling slowly like a shark cutting through black water. He had seen her leave. He had been watching the back of the diner too, waiting for exactly this moment, and now he was hunting her through the empty streets of a town that had long since gone to sleep. Megan didn't run, not yet. Running would tell him she knew, would trigger whatever sick instinct was driving her, and she needed to stay calm, to think. The gas station was still a block and a half away, its lights glowing faintly in the distance like a promise she wasn't sure she could reach. She pulled out her phone and dialed 911, whispering her location to the dispatcher, telling her about the truck, the man, the way he had watched her all night. The dispatcher told her to stay on the line, that units were being sent, but Megan could hear the truck getting closer, its engine a low growl in the silence, and she knew the police wouldn't arrive in time. She ran. She sprinted toward the gas station, her lungs burning in the cold air, and behind her, the truck's headlights finally flicked on, flooding the street with blinding white light as the engine roared to life. He was done being patient. Megan reached the gas station lot just as the truck skidded to a stop at the entrance, blocking the only way out. She didn't hesitate. She ran inside, past the startled attendant, and ducked behind the counter, screaming for him to lock the doors, to call the police, to do something. The attendant, a young guy barely out of high school, fumbled with his phone while staring out the window at the truck, which sat idling in the lot, its driver still hidden behind the glare of the headlights. For 37 seconds, nothing happened. Then the truck's door opened, and the man in the denim jacket stepped out, walking slowly toward the gas station entrance, that same thin smile on his face. He stopped at the glass door, looked directly at Megan crouched behind the counter, and raised one hand in a small wave, casual, almost mocking, like this was a game and he was enjoying every second of it. Then the sirens started, faint at first but growing louder, and something in his expression shifted. The smile disappeared. He turned, walked back to his truck, and drove away, disappearing into the darkness before the first patrol car arrived. The police searched for 3 hours but never found him. Megan gave them a description, told them everything she could remember about his face, his jacket, his truck, but it wasn't enough. 3 weeks later, a detective called her with news that made her go cold. The man matched the description of a suspect wanted in connection with the disappearances of 4 women across Central California over the past 2 years. All of them had been approached late at night. All of them had been alone. None of them had ever been found. Megan quit her job at the Starlight Diner the next morning and moved back to Denver, where her ex-boyfriend and his problems suddenly seemed a lot less frightening than the alternative. She still works nights sometimes. She's a nurse now, in a hospital full of people and security cameras and locked doors, but she never forgets that man's face, that thin smile, that little wave through the glass. She was supposed to be victim number 5, and the only reason she isn't is because she trusted her instincts when everything logical told her she was overreacting. The case remains open. The man in the denim jacket has never been identified, and somewhere out there, Megan knows he's still watching someone, still waiting, still smiling that patient smile, looking for the woman who will finally make the mistake of walking out alone.